Live from New Delhi, you're watching DD India Global. I am Tanvi Taneja. We'll get you top stories from across India and the region. And for news from the rest of the world, I'm joined by my colleague in London, Ollie Barrett. Good afternoon, Ollie.
Hello, Tanvi. It's 11:30 a.m. here in London, 12:30 p.m. across Central Europe. Coming up in the next half hour, an internet shutdown in Pakistan, a US strike in Baghdad, and a climate investigation from space, and plenty more besides. First, the headlines.
At least 5 people killed in fresh attacks as violence mars Pakistan's general election. Mobile phone services suspended while borders with Iran and Afghanistan closed for a day. Israel rejects Hamas's proposed ceasefire terms as Prime Minister Netanyahu insists on total victory over the Palestinian group. US's Blinken says the response still creates space for a deal. US Senate Republicans block a bipartisan border deal but say that they could still approve aid for Ukraine and Israel tied to the deal. And world surpasses key warming threshold of 1.5 degrees Celsius across an entire year for the first time. So starting from news coming from India, India's Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman presented the white paper on the Indian economy in Parliament today. White paper compares the economic performance of 10 years of the Congress-led UPA government with that of 10 years of the BJP-led NDA government. The objectives of the white paper is that it seeks to apprise the members of parliament of the nature and extent of governance, economic and fiscal crises that were bequeathed on this government when it assumed office in 2014. Further, it informs about the policies and measures that our government took to restore the health of the economy and make it vigorous and capable of fulfilling the growth aspirations of the people in the present and in the Amrit Kal, that is the period to the centenary year of India's independence. 5 people were killed in fresh attacks in Pakistan on Thursday after temporarily suspending mobile phone services to strengthen security as the country voted in a general election to elect a new government. So Pakistanis braved the cold winter weather and the threat of violence to start voting to elect their new government. On Thursday, twin bombings a day before claimed at least 30 lives in the worst election-related violence ahead of the contested elections.
Voting began in Pakistan for the parliamentary elections on Thursday under tight security amidst terror attacks, an ongoing economic crisis and a deeply polarized political environment. Although Pakistanis are voting for a better future, they continue to live under the shadows of terror. Whenever our country was put under martial law, the situation worsened. Now things are worse than ever. Earlier things were way better. Now even 10 people earn in a family and it's not enough. The economic situation is so bad that we can't survive. In every household, every person, including children, are earning money, but still their financial situation is very bad. If we talk about electricity bills, gas bills, water bills, it's way beyond our thinking. The election comes almost 2 years since former Prime Minister and cricketer turned politician Imran Khan was ousted in a no-confidence motion. He was later jailed on corruption charges and now is barred from contesting elections. 3-time PM Nawaz Sharif is on the ballot this time, while on the other hand, Bilawal Bhutto Zardari, son of slain politician and former Pakistani PM Benazir Bhutto, is in the fray. He has run an aggressive campaign in a bid for the top political post. In view of the prevailing uncertainties, security has been beefed up and closely monitored at the polling booths. Mobile phone services have been suspended across the country. The country's western border crossings with Iran and Afghanistan have also been sealed and will be reopened on Friday. The government's decision to deploy tens of thousands of troops at polling stations across the country comes after 2 blasts near the election offices that killed 26 people in southwestern province of Balochistan. The Islamic State claimed responsibility for the explosions. Meanwhile, seeing the current situation, former Indian High Commissioner to Pakistan, Ajay Bisaria, has said that Pakistan general elections are the most predictable and most rigged.
The election results are clear that the army in various ways is doing pre-election engineering. It will probably do some election engineering and post-election engineering to get a government that it wants in place.
Defense expert Sushant Sareen meanwhile said there are speculations that these attacks might be falsely planned and staged and executed by the Pakistani army to ensure a total control on the situation.
The attacks have been happening for over a week now. There was an attack on a police station. Some speculation whether these attacks were being done as false flag attacks.
However, irrespective of the poll results, the incoming government will have to confront formidable challenges, including managing internal unrest, addressing a severe economic crisis, and tackling the issue of illegal migration.
Now, DD India's Jessica Taneja joins us live on this story. Jessica, these elections have been marred by violence over the last few weeks, yet it is an election where the youth is in focus. So what is different in this general elections of Pakistan?
Well, the 120 million people who are out to vote today in this crucial election, the 12th general election being held in our neighborhood of Pakistan, approximately half the population is 35 years old, so a younger population that is voting, and a lot from them are also first-time voters. And if you see the reports, their aspirations, their hopes are completely different from what the other voters are expecting from the from the candidates who've been campaigning for so long. Of course, there are issues concerning high inflation rates, increase in food prices, and of course, electricity bills. These issues certainly dominate the election, but at the same time, the electorate seems to be divided at this point, even though former Prime Minister Imran Khan, who was the opposition in this election. Right now, the contest fairly squarely is between the People's Pakistan Muslim League Nawaz, at the helm of affairs is Nawaz Sharif, and on the other hand, there is Pakistan's People Party held by Mr. Bhutto, who also was serving as the foreign minister of the country. So at this point, the front-runner Nawaz Sharif is poised to win amid allegations of poll rigging as well. Since morning, as you've already read in the report, internet services have been shut down. Many people who are going out to vote say that it's difficult because they can't find taxis or locate their polling stations. There are also reports emerging which suggest that polling agents haven't been able to oversee the elections, and Pakistan is already facing this allegation of pre-poll rigging and not being able to conduct free and fair elections. And this crucial election is being watched not just by India and its neighborhood, but also by the West.
Yes, so a perilous journey for Pakistanis to vote. That's it. Thank you so much, Jessica, for those updates. Now, former Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif also cast his vote in Lahore in this parliamentary election. With former Prime Minister Imran Khan in jail, Sharif's Pakistan Muslim League Nawaz is tipped to emerge as the single largest party in these elections, as also being reported by our correspondent. On to the crisis in West Asia now. Israel has rejected the Hamas's proposal of a 135-day truce, with the Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu saying that he will continue his fight until victory is achieved over Hamas. Now, US Secretary of State Antony Blinken has also indicated that the proposal had clear non-starters. My colleague Ollie Barrett is in London. He gives us more on this and other stories making headlines around the world. Ollie, is there some hope for some sort of a deal as of now?
Well, the US says there is, and we'll get to that in a bit more detail in a second. But as you were saying, the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has rejected Hamas's latest terms for a ceasefire and the return of hostages being held in Gaza. Hamas was responding to an Israel-backed ceasefire proposal with its suggested terms, which reportedly included a 45-day pause in fighting and a phased exchange of hostages and prisoners. There would also have been a withdrawal of troops from Gaza by Israel. But calling Hamas delusional, Benjamin Netanyahu said there was no alternative for Israel but to bring about the group's collapse.
Peace and security require total victory over Hamas. We cannot accept anything else. Can you imagine what will happen if we don't have total victory? Hamas leaders have already pledged they'll repeat the October 7th massacre over and over and over again. No nation can accept that. We certainly won't. Without total victory, Iran and its terror proxies, Hamas, Hezbollah, the Houthis, and others, will be emboldened to subvert moderate states in the Middle East. They'll threaten the entire free world. Only total victory will prevent that. And total victory is within our reach. Military pressure led to the release of 110 hostages, and only continued military pressure will bring home the remaining hostages.
Well, US Secretary of State Antony Blinken has been meeting with Israel's War Cabinet member, Minister Benny Gantz, to discuss regional threats. That after meeting Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. And the top US diplomat said that Hamas's proposal for a ceasefire contained clear non-starters, but did insist it leaves space for an agreement to be reached.
We had an opportunity today to discuss with the Israeli government the response that Hamas sent last night to the proposal that the United States, Qatar, and Egypt had put together to bring the remaining hostages home and extend the humanitarian pause. What I can tell you about these discussions is that while there are some clear non-starters in Hamas's response, we do think it creates space for agreement to be reached. And we will work at that relentlessly until we get there.
A US military strike in Iraq's capital, Baghdad, has killed a Hezbollah commander, Abu Bakr al-Saidi, who was said to be responsible for attacks on US forces in the region. The US has been carrying out retaliatory attacks against Iran-backed militants who killed 3 US soldiers in a drone attack in Jordan last month. Iraq has reacted and said that repeated US strikes are pushing the government towards ending the US-led international coalition's mission in the country. Jordan's King Abdullah, meanwhile, is on a tour of major Western capitals amid fears of an escalating crisis in the Middle East. He's scheduled to visit France and Germany, and the King will then travel to the United States to meet with US President Joe Biden and other top leaders to attempt to pursue an end to the conflict in Gaza. To the conflict in Ukraine now, and Kyiv says it has destroyed 11 out of 17 Russian drones over 4 regions in the country on Thursday, damaging more than 20 residential and commercial houses. The drones were hit over Odessa and Mykolaiv regions in the south, and Dnipropetrovsk in the southeast and the central Vinnytsia region. No casualties were reported by officials. The European Union's foreign policy chief, Josep Borrell, has met with Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky. The Ukrainian presidential office says the two leaders discussed accelerating artillery ammunition supplies and a draft law on mobilization that passed a first reading in Ukraine's parliament on Wednesday. Borrell also discussed the EU's military and financial support with top Ukrainian officials and Kyiv's progress on reforms in its bid to join the 27-member European Union bloc. US Senate Republicans have blocked a bipartisan border deal that had taken months to negotiate, but they say they could still approve aid for Ukraine and Israel that was tied up in that deal. Senators in both parties are now engaged in urgent talks to see if they can reach an agreement that would allow a debate on a foreign aid package without the border security provisions. Donald Trump has been pressing his fellow Republicans to reject any compromise as he campaigns to defeat Democratic President Joe Biden in the upcoming November election. US National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan, meanwhile, says the White House is focused on getting Ukraine an aid package through the US Congress.
At the end of the day, there is no alternative to the United States stepping up to the plate and providing a level of resources that allow Ukraine to have the artillery, the air defense systems, and the other capabilities they need. And time is of the essence in this regard. So we are going to stay focused on that, and we believe that we still can and will deliver it.
The European Union's Copernicus Climate Change Service says global warming has exceeded 1.5 degrees Celsius across an entire year for the first time compared to pre-industrial levels. In the 2015 Paris Agreement, countries agreed to try and prevent global warming surpassing 1.5 degrees Celsius to avoid severe and irreversible consequences. An EU official said that rapid reductions in greenhouse gas emissions are the only way to stop global temperatures from rising. DD India's Ishan Garg reports from Brussels.
That's the initial verdict of the scientific community. New data from the Brussels-based Copernicus Climate Change Service shows the global mean temperature between February 2023 to January 2024 was the highest ever at 15.02 degrees.
Dropping
that
or
means
rapping?
The average temperature rose by 1.52 degrees compared to pre-industrial levels. In 2015, world leaders agreed to keep global warming, quote, well below 2 degrees Celsius and to aim for only 1.5 degrees Celsius. The 2-degree mark is believed to be the tipping point after which many impacts of climate change could potentially become irreversible. Analysts say the recent data should not be seen as a harbinger of doom, though, although it does put the planet on track to seeing significant impacts of climate change in the long term. Scientists say the global temperatures are stabilizing, but not as quickly as they should. The adoption of green technology like electric vehicles in many parts of the world has helped. But the effects of climate change are also becoming increasingly extreme, resulting in wildfires in Chile and the US to flooding in countries in Asia such as China and India. Climate patterns, including El Nino and La Nina, are not helping either, potentially contributing to global warming. Scientists say a rapid reduction in global greenhouse gas emissions is urgently needed. Just this week, the European Union unveiled plans to cut emissions by 90% by 2040. But analysts say more green funding for developing countries and investments in sustainable developments are needed to limit the impact of climate change on the most vulnerable. Ishan Garg in Brussels, reporting for DD India.
Well, from Ishan in Brussels to me here in London, back to you, Tanvi, in Delhi.
Thank you very much, Ollie. Ollie and me presenting to you DD India Global. Still to come on this show. India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi bid farewell to the retiring members of the upper house of Parliament. PM Modi lauds former Prime Minister Dr. Manmohan Singh's contribution to the House. Australian government proposes new laws that would give workers the right to ignore their bosses' calls and messages outside of work hours. All that on the other side.
Is telepathy real or fiction? Could it soon be a reality? Imagine controlling your world with your mind. Elon Musk's brain chip promises telepathy for real. But is it safe? Is it ethical? I connect the dots to get the full picture. Watch Connecting the Dots every Friday at 8 p.m. IST on DD.
Welcome back. You're watching DD India Global. I am Tanvi Taneja. Back to New Delhi. Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi today attended an event marking the 150th anniversary of Srila Prabhupada at the Bharat Mandapam. Srila Prabhupada was the founder of Gaudiya Mission, who played a pivotal role in preserving and spreading the fundamental tenets of the Vaishnava faith. The Prime Minister also released a commemorative stamp and a coin in honor of the spiritual guru Srila Prabhupada. India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi bid farewell to the lawmakers retiring from the upper house of Indian Parliament, the Rajya Sabha. The Prime Minister also lauded former Prime Minister Manmohan Singh's contribution to the upper house, saying that he strengthened democracy as he worked even while being on a wheelchair. 68 members of the Rajya Sabha are retiring between February and May after completion of their terms.
वैचारिक मतभेद, कभी बहस में छिटाकशी, वो तो बहुत अल्पकालीन होता है, लेकिन इतने लंबे अरसे तक जिस प्रकार से उन्होंने इस सदन का मार्गदर्शन किया है, देश का मार्गदर्शन किया है, वो हमेशा हमेशा जब भी हमारे लोकतंत्र की चर्चा होगी तो कुछ माननीय सदस्यों की जो चर्चा होगी उसमें माननीय डॉक्टर मनमोहन सिंह की योगदान की चर्चा जरूर होगी.
On to the security situation in Myanmar now. Addressing a press briefing, Ministry of External Affairs of India's Randhir Jaiswal underscored that there are significant concerns in Myanmar and the government has issued directive for safe evacuation of Indian citizens.
म्यांमार में वहाँ पर भी स्थिति थोड़ी चिंताजनक है जहाँ तक सुरक्षा का बात है, और हम लोगों ने कल एक एडवाइजरी निकाला था. जो हम लोग वहाँ पर हमारे नागरिक हैं उनको हम कह रहे हैं कि आप वहाँ से निकल जाएं, और जो हमारे नागरिक वहाँ जाना चाहते हैं उनको कह रहे हैं, उनसे हमारी ये गुजारिश है कि आप लोग वहाँ ना जाएं क्योंकि वहाँ की स्थिति नाजुक है.
And next in DD India Global, we take a look at what else is happening across the world. A volcano erupted on Thursday in southwest Iceland for the second time this year, making it the sixth outbreak on the Reykjanes Peninsula since 2021. Icelanders are working round the clock to build dikes the size of 3-story buildings to protect a vital power plant and homes from lava flows. Australia's government has proposed new laws that would give workers the right to ignore calls and messages from their bosses outside of work hours. The right to disconnect is part of multiple changes to industrial relation laws under a parliamentary bill that was passed by the Senate on Thursday. The extraordinary Puppy Bowl will celebrate its 20th anniversary on Sunday. 131 puppies from 73 shelters and rescues across 36 states and territories will participate in this spectacular event. The event also aims to encourage adoption of pet animals.
Out of bounds at the 43.
Great inside coverage from
So that's it in this edition of DD India Global. Do join us for another edition of the show at 7:30 p.m. Indian Standard Time. Connect with us on Facebook, Instagram, X, formerly known as Twitter, at DD India Live. I am Tanvi Taneja from my entire team in New Delhi. Thank you for watching. Namaskar.